Look, this fight card, whenever you get a pay-per-view of this magnitude, UFC 320, we know it's going to be deep. But on the main card, and certainly the main event, when you've got a rematch like this now, light heavyweight here for Magomed Ankalaev, the champion, against Alex Pereira, the challenger again, how much of the data read just comes from the first fight instead of encompassing the other fights that were not against each other?
Yeah, so I use kind of a rolling average. It's about a 5-year window of fighters. So some of the fights from 5 years ago have dropped off, and usually for a champion, those are going to be really, really good performance stats because those are victories during their rise to the top. And now we're including a much tougher fight. That first fight was basically a pick'em on closing odds. And what we saw was actually not what we expected. I was expecting, hey, Pereira is going to own the feet, and Ankalaev is going to take him down and clinch and just put him on the mat and stifle that game. And he went 0 for 12 on takedowns. I had to look that up. I was shocked. I'm thinking in my mind, I remember it being fairly close.
Yeah.
He won most of the rounds, and it was only a 1-round victory for 2 of the cards, I think. But it was actually 0 for 12 on takedowns. And the control time, which did add up to a few minutes and probably swayed some rounds, was primarily just clinching on the fence. And so it was a volume performance. It was Ankalaev just throwing more strikes over 5 rounds. And I think that's what got it done. So it was not what I expected to see. However, I will say on that first matchup at Pick'em odds, I had a strong lean on Ankalaev and it came through. Here we are. I did not see what I expected. The price is now gone way up. He's north of a 2-to-1 favorite, Ankalaev is. And that's a little surprising. So the model sort of agrees with him being a favorite. We didn't see enough from Pereira in the last fight to really scare us. But at this price, this is like almost a pass. I mean, really mathematically, there is a small edge that is playable. And so I might have a sprinkle on this bet, but absolutely not my most important play of the night.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because you and I have talked about it through the years where the model's going to tell you where there could even be an advantage on the dog, that you understand why the favorite is a favorite. It's not to that point yet. So still seeing a small edge to the champion, but not enough for you to pull the trigger on it and bet it. And I think that's good advice for people out there. If you're not seeing a statistical edge here in the model, you don't have to force feed that main event with all the volume of fights you have in the card. Very quickly, that total is sitting at 3.5. These get populated on a Wednesday per our conversation today. And Pereira says he's going to do some things differently, right? But if he did have the fight standing already and he couldn't get it done there with the hands, that's where you think the advantage would come. Like, do you expect if Magomed was 0 for 12 in takedowns, that he keeps shooting those? Or do you think he says, all right, I didn't really feel the danger at the hands with Pereira. I can fight the same style and win again just the way I did?
Yeah, Pereira is still the harder hitter. I have to boil it down to a knockdown metric to see who really hits harder, because they both have 7 knockdowns. They both have knockouts. But on a per strike basis, Pereira actually hits harder. So he has like a higher knockdown rate. When he lands it, you're more likely to fall down. That's what it boils down to. So I still believe like he is the sniper, whereas Ankalaev, a lot of those were head kicks. They weren't necessarily punches, and kicks are more powerful, obviously. So in terms of the hand game, if they're getting into just fisticuffs, it's Pereira who still has the advantage, and that's dangerous. I think Ankalaev has to find a better way to get the fight to the ground where he can own a round and completely nullify Pereira's best strength, which is long-range striking. And so I think he's got to use the fence to set up those takedowns. It's not that he didn't try last time. I think he's going to try some new techniques. But you talk about the adjustments on the Pereira side. They're going to be on both sides, right? Both these guys have now spent 5 rounds with each other. Neither one of them dominated that fight. It was a mixed round, mixed scoring type situation. So they both will probably come back with adjustments on how to better put the fight in their preferred position. And Pereira, that's still going to be standing. Ankalaev, I don't think he wants to risk another 5 rounds at range with Pereira.
Right.
He needs to find a better way to get it down. So I would also lean the over for that reason.
So let's start right there with the main event, because again, my heart is going to be with Alex Pereira. The numbers seem like they're bearing out to play the Ankalaev side, but I wonder, does your model projection show that maybe he's too big a favorite at this juncture?
That's very much where I'm leaning. I mean, no pressure, but I get to follow up Reed Kuhn, who essentially was the reason I started data modeling. So no pressure to me if I'm on the opposite side, right?
Right.
But we obviously know Ankalaev won the first fight, and not much has changed. It's always interesting when we get to revisit a rematch, but nothing has happened since, because the only data is those in this case, 5 rounds in between, right? That they now share together. And as Reed pointed out, Ankalaev's takedown numbers have now gone down because you go 0 for 12, that moves your percentages down. And the interesting thing is, what I find is the XR percentages are very high for Ankalaev, low for Pereira. Considering how dominant of a champion he was in the light heavyweight division, his XR percentage is only 59%. Ankalaev is 77%,
Wow.
which makes sense for Ankalaev, right? He's grappling, he's wrestling, he's clinching you up against the cage. But I think with Pereira, the deceiving part is that he's willing to lose rounds to you. You look at that Khalil Roundtree fight, it was something that was never mentioned during the broadcast. I remember watching the fight, but I believe he really lost like the first 2 rounds to Roundtree because he just wasn't really engaging. I mean, he got clipped, whether or not he got officially dropped, but he got clipped and everything, but he was never concerned. He knew he would wear down Khalil Roundtree, and he did. My gosh.
But that was his strategy. His strategy was, I'll take some of the fire early, I'll tire him out, and I'll get him out of there late. And I wonder if he was thinking the same thing in the first fight against Ankalaev, that if this guy stands and trades with me for 5 rounds and I stuffed all the takedowns that he attempted, because let's be honest, Magomed is not your typical Dagestani fighter at this level, right? In this weight class. He is willing to engage you with the hands. So like we talked about with Reed, when I see that total at 3.5, I want to look to the under at plus money, that this is different, but Reed's numbers don't see it that way, and that we could get more of the same. And if Ankalaev does get a takedown, that could almost be a stalemate for a round if he can't get the finish against Pereira.
So I think, something that's interesting, and I read also, Lou wrote about this at vsin.com, another reason to check out the website.
And he'll be on Buy the Books on Friday.
There you go. Double plug. Make sure you subscribe. $9.99.
There you go.
But Pereira looked different in that fight, right? And he had been he was kind of the UFC's superstar at the time, right? He was doing all sorts of media hits, TikToks, and all over social media. He was a busy man as champion, I think, and he was also defending the belt consistently, right? Yeah. This also is a small window to return back, but now he's not the champion. He doesn't have the pressure of those media hits. So I think he comes in a little cleaner, and I think there's still another level of aggression he could show in the cage that he's shown before. And so when you look at the striking numbers, Reed mentioned it, Pereira's obviously the sharper striker. I mean, he hits 5 significant strikes landed per minute with a 1.5 differential, meaning he's only absorbing 3.5. So he knows what Ankalaev's worst hits are. I don't think Ankalaev saw the most dangerous hit from Pereira. And if you're telling me the most dangerous left hook in the UFC is which when I was writing up these notes last night, plus 210, he's now plus 230. It may not be a full bet, but for me, that price is enough to, shave down the unit and put it on the underdog. Because I think at plus 230, I mean, Pereira is he's a live dog.
Well, I'll be joining you in that play. And again, I'm going to be with you on the Pereira side here. I can't imagine if this is the end of the Alex Pereira era, that he goes out the way it went in the first fight, with more to be desired, right?